Father and his son were out in the garage one day cleaning up and straightening it, doing some summer cleaning, and they kind of were working with some big pieces. There was some furniture out there that had been there for years, was all dusty. Father was on one side of the garage, and he was wondering why the son wasn't over there, and he looked over and he saw his son trying to push this dresser to get it out of the way so he could clean the floor there in the garage. And he was watching him, and he was giving it all of his strength, putting a lot of effort into it, but it wasn't budging at all. And so the father went over and he said, "Son," he said, "what are you doing?" He goes, "Well, Dad, I'm trying to move the dresser." And the son said, "But Dad, I'm not getting very far." And the father said, "Well, are you doing the best that you can? Are you doing everything that you can to move that dresser? Are you giving it your all, your whole strength?" And he said, "Yes, Dad, I am." And the father said, "No, you're not. You're not doing everything that you can, because what you failed to do was to ask me to help you move it." You see, very often, because of our own pride, because of our maybe lack of humility, we won't ask for help. But there's a beautiful grace in asking for help. There's a beautiful grace in asking for the Lord's assistance, not only from God, but from other people, because they are God's messengers here on earth and God's helpers. God put each one of us here into like a net, kind of knit us together into a tethered web. And we're all kind of intertwined, each one of us with our gifts and our talents, and God asks us to be able to help one another. It takes a lot for someone to ask for help. It does take a lot. Some people can't ever get over that hump. And know also that if you're ever asked for help, maybe to assist someone on the side of the road or help somebody at home, maybe children asking help with their homework, maybe helping out a family member with a crisis that's going on, how do you respond? Do you say, "Wow, I feel honored and privileged that somebody is asking me for assistance," or do I get put off by it? Today, Jesus is saying, "Come to me, all who labor." He's inviting people to come to him with all of our problems, with our issues, and with our stuff, whatever that might be. Jesus is not afraid. He's saying, "Don't bear it alone, but bring it to me, and I will help you with it, whatever it is, how heavy it is, whatever is on your mind." He uses a beautiful agricultural example about the yoke and the oxen. And we may not be familiar with what a yoke is. It's not the part of the egg that he's talking about today. The yoke was the bar, the beam that goes between the two animals, between the two oxen. So it was like a wooden beam or bar that was fit over the necks of the animals, custom fit just for them. It wasn't a standard thing. It was custom for each one of the animals so that they wouldn't have to get any kind of bad irritation from helping each other out. And then in the middle of the beam was a leather strap, and it would pull the plow. One of the oxen, even for all of their weight, would not be able to move the plow. But two of them together, they could do it. And so the load was lightened because they would pull the plow, and they would do it in unison. And there's a lot to be said for that in our own lives. Because do we help one another out? Or do we become very insulated, very isolated into our own little worlds? I kind of notice, something about living in Florida, and a lot of people will say this, that you ride through neighborhoods. Like I like to ride my bike around, and I'll ride, and there's some days I don't see anybody outside. Because what do we do in Florida? We go into our driveway, we click the button, the garage goes up, we go into the garage goes down. You never have to see anybody. So you don't know if your neighbor maybe needs help. Do you even know your neighbor? Would you be able and comfortable going to someone right in your general vicinity if you were in need of something? Would you feel comfortable doing that? Also, I notice sometimes I'll see couples married many years, maybe 30, 40 years, and you notice you'll see them out at a restaurant and neither of them are talking. Nobody's saying anything to each other, and you wonder, well, why aren't they communicating? Aren't they sharing their life? I know a lot of our young people, I worry about our young people who grow up in this electronic age because they're always looking at their phones. It's kind of like the escape. If you're standing waiting online in the supermarket or wherever you might be, you're kind of like, oh, well, I don't want to just stand here alone. What do? You go right into the phone. And it kind of draws you in there, but the phone's not a human being. And do we lose that personal interaction, that invitation to help, to assist, to get to know one another, to share our lives with each other? Because we're not called to live it alone. And God is there first and foremost. He's saying, yes, I want to share your life every day. Do we talk to God? If we don't talk to other people, how likely are we going to be to talk to God? Are we able to converse with him and tell him about our day? So that especially when there is a crisis, something that we really need, that we're not only going to him at that time, but we share our joys and our sorrows with him. One summer when I was pastor out in Oviedo, I had a seminarian with me. And he was a little quiet, and we were very different. He's of the millennial generation, and I'm kind of beyond that. So, we didn't always have a lot to talk about at dinner in the evening. And I kind of thought, well, how are we going to kind of make a breakthrough here in conversation when we go out to eat or sitting in the rectory? And I thought, we're both coming from different places, but I kind of want to know what's going on in his mind. I want to share life, to do what Jesus said, to come to him and to not be afraid. So I said, you know what? Maybe every evening at dinner or before we would turn in for the night, maybe we would play a game. And I called it high-low. Maybe you call it peak-pit. And so you kind of talk to the other person, each person, whoever's there, you have to say, what was your high for the day and what was your low for the day? It's actually a really good thing to do because it forces you to talk about what's on your mind. So from this seminarian, I would hear that, oh, he had a good day. Well, what was good about it? What was the high? Oh, I, gave a really good talk to the young people. I was able to go out for a great jog today. I made all of my appointments and I was on time and punctual. I guess for a millennial, that's like really important, to be on time and punctual. So, okay, that's great. Well, what was the low for the day? When we have to be vulnerable, it's a little harder to talk about maybe what our struggle was for the day or maybe where we were in the pit. And what would that be like? And so what was it? So he would say, well, maybe he didn't make all of his appointments and he was a little bit late. Maybe he got rained on. Maybe he got wet. Maybe he forgot to clean the dishes in the sink. Maybe he was complaining about the ogre that he had for a pastor that summer. I don't really know. But he would say, and it was a great conversation starter for us. And that's sharing. And that's what God invites us into. He wants us to share with him our struggles, to not be afraid, our joys, not be afraid, to be able to have a humility of heart and to not have so much pride that we will never go to him. Today we hear his beautiful invitation. And as you come forward for communion, receive from him that special moment that he's saying to you, come to me, all who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon your shoulder and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We can lighten the load by sharing and partnering with Christ.